It's just past 10 o'clock and I just got done. I'm freaking tired. I remember I was thinking about taking a nap at 2:30 and then I was like, man, I really got to get all this done. And so I just went ahead and got all of it done. I found a pasture to put my calves on. There's that pasture, that 50-acre pasture that I was talking about. It's just around the corner from me. And so I went ahead and just put my cattle on that pasture because the pasture is good to go. And it's very close to me. That pasture is very close to me, so I can feed the cattle every day if I have to. I can I can leave them enough food out there to last them about 2 or 3 days, and then I can just go out there and feed them right every twice, 2, 3 times a week. Just keep track of them. They're right around the corner. You know, it's a 15-minute drive. It's not even a 20-minute drive to get to them. It's like 17 minutes or something like that. And so. Yep, the cattle are on a pasture, and that means tomorrow I can start expanding my business again. So I will start expanding my business again. And the big idea right now is I got 16 animals on that pasture over there, and I'm gonna put and then I'm gonna bring home another 4 cattle, and then I'll have another 16 calves over here. And then once these 16 calves are effectively good to go, you know, tomorrow when I go to the sale barn, well, I mean, I'll look for a good deal. You know, my whole thing right now is just buy good deals. I'm looking for good deals, and so whatever I can get a good deal on, I'll buy. And but if I can get a good deal on a couple of 350-pound calves, that'd be fantastic. I'll precondition them, and then I'll put the 16 calves out on another pasture. I got that pasture that I'm working on right now. I got to get the fence fixed on the 75-acre pasture. I have to get the fence fixed on that one, and so I'm gonna put the 16 calves on that one, and then I'm gonna bring home some more animals. I got one smaller animal on the pasture that I took to the calves to today, but it's also a heifer. I got a kind of a smallish heifer, so I'm not too worried about that. And then I'll have to start liquidating calves and reinvesting the money, and when I reinvest the money, that'll put me in a very good spot. I would anticipate that my business grows to about probably around 60 cattle within 3 months, something like that. 60 cattle within 3 months, and that will be just from me reinvesting my earnings, and that will also be about the end of the year. And I would be looking to leverage myself. All right, sometime between now and then, I will be looking to leverage myself, and when I leverage myself. I will take a look at how much leverage I should take, and then I will leverage myself. But the whole thing with everything, I would reasonably anticipate that I make something around and this is gonna be my net. My net will be something like $65,000-$70,000 within 4 months. Okay, within 3-4 months, that's how much I'll net. That's how much money I'll have, and then I can reinvest that money back into my business, and I'll end up buying myself 60 cattle or so. And so with everything, and if I net 60, right, if I net 60, then I'll also be looking to leverage against that too. So, yep, I do, my whole thing about today, the thing that I was looking to talk about is the idea that you can there are things in the world. Money is a very superficial thing. Okay, my whole thing about money is that it is important, but money's not everything. Okay, money is not everything. It is extremely important. All right, you don't want to be in a situation where you think money's not important, and then you're an idiot and you're bankrupting yourself and you're doing all these whatever, you're YOLO, right? And whatever it may be that, you don't want to be in that situation. My whole thing about saying money's not important or money is not everything, that, when I say money's not everything, the whole thing is like you shouldn't sell your soul to the devil for money, okay? Don't sell your soul to the devil for money. It's not going to do anything. At the end of the day, if you legitimately think 100 grand is going to save your life, right? If you legitimately think 100 grand is going to save your life, and you go to the bank and you take a loan for 100 grand, and they give you an 8% interest rate, for you to borrow 100 grand, you're just going to be paying $8,000 a year, okay? And then take your 100 grand and save your life, all right? 100 grand, don't sell your soul to the devil for money, all right? My whole thing about this was the thing I was going to talk about today is that there are things in the world that are worth money. There are things, I'm not going to say worth money. I'm going to say there are things in the world that are valuable that are not money, okay? There are things in the world that are valuable that are not money. All right? This is the big thing that, this is something I believe that gets me very far in my life. It gets me very far in my life. And it's nothing, and I guess it's not that it's nothing to do with money. It has to do with everything. All right, it's not just money. It's everything. It's how I conduct myself. It's how I go through things. Honesty is one of these things. I'm very honest. When it comes to money, all right. I'm very honest about it. If I say I'll pay, I pay. All right. I don't, fiddle diddle with money. Yeah, I don't make deals that I cannot, uphold. All right, if I think that I cannot uphold my side of the deal, then I won't make the deal. Okay, you know, you know, honesty is one of these things. I'm honest. All right. If I tell you that I made $9,048 and some odd change, then I made $9,048 and some odd change. Okay. God as my witness. All right. I don't make these numbers up. Okay. I tell you what I make, and it is what it is. Okay. God is my witness. All right, and I show you my checks. Sometimes I forget to take a picture of my check, but I don't lie about it. Okay. God is my witness. All right. Another thing that if I say I'm gonna do something, I do it. All right. I think that this is very important. All right. I don't. If I say I'm gonna do something, I do it. Okay. All right. That's one thing about me. And if I can't make it, then I will tell you in advance. All right. I'm not just gonna ghost. I'm not just gonna disappear. All right. But and I've always said that it's very important. All right, this is something that a lot of people, I feel like it's something maybe that doesn't really get talked about very often, or the idea doesn't get very discussed very often. But poor people act like poor people. All right, poor people act like poor people. I've always said that if you have one problem, it will cost you everything. All right, if you lie, it will cost you everything. If you steal, it will cost you everything. If you scheme, it will cost you everything. All right. One problem will cost you everything. I'm telling you, that's how it works out. All right. And sometimes I ask myself, what is my biggest problem? What do I see as my biggest problem? What do I think is my biggest problem? Right. Sometimes I ask myself, what is my biggest problem? What do I think is the thing that is costing me? What do I think is the thing that is I guess the jar of my life. Sometimes I actually sometimes I think about this. I was even thinking about it today. I'll even legitimately ask myself, what do I think is my biggest problem? Like, what do I see as my biggest problem? Like, and sometimes I think about this, right? And and it's hard. It's hard, and I'm still in the process of digesting that, and I'm still trying to come up with something, right? Because realistically, I mean, I'm on track to more than double the size of my business over the next 3 months. I'm on track to more than double the size of my business over the next 4 months. I may even increase the size of my business by more than threefold over the next just 3 or 4 months. Okay, I may even go 400%. I'm not entirely sure. It may even be over 200%. Okay, and I'm on track to do very well. I got a lot of things done. The projects got done on time. I still got a few big projects that I'm working on, but at least I have enough finished to get myself rolling. Okay, I got one pasture, and then I got another pasture that'll be ready next week. I got the fence getting fixed next week, and then after that, I got another pasture that's a little bit down the way, and I can put animals over there. And when I put animals over there, I can also go to sale barns in that area while I'm in that area. And if I just, divide up 15, 20 animals per pasture, All right, that'll put me at I got 5 pastures, and that'll put me at 75 animals right there. And one of my pastures is real big. Realistically, even my 75-acre pasture, I'll probably even put 25 cattle over there, 30 cattle over there. On this 50-acre pasture, I've already got 16 animals over there. And I'll probably put another 5 animals over there or so. Or I'll figure it out. And then I got another I'm going to divide up these animals on these different pastures accordingly. So, but my business will probably more than double over the next 3 or 4 months. All right, I may end up with over 100 animals in 4 months. Within 4 months, I may legitimately end up with over 100 animals. I may end up with about 100 animals. My whole thing about my situation was that my baseline was 50. My baseline was 50, but what I did was I sold 15 animals, and then I paid off I sold 15 animals, something like that. I sold 15, 16 animals. I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember exactly. I sold off like 15 something, or I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember exactly how many animals I sold. I may have even sold 18 animals. Somewhere between 15 and 20 animals. I sold somewhere between 15 and 20 animals. And I paid off my debt with it. I paid off debt with it. And so I paid off $15,000 worth of debt. And so that dropped my baseline, right? If I have $1,000 as if I have $1,000 as the baseline number, and I sold off and I paid off $15,000 worth of debt, that would drop my baseline number down to 35. And so once I reinvest my capital, I'll be at 32. And so I'm still -3, but I have a lot of positive equity. I still have a lot of positive equity. So, once I start liquidating animals, I can reinvest my earnings. And, realistically, my baseline number right now is 35 just because I paid off debt. I did pay off $15,000 worth of debt. So my baseline number is honestly 35 just because I paid off my debt. If I didn't pay off my debt and I was still holding my assets, I would have 15 more cattle. That's the thing. And so, that's a reasonable way to look at it. And so, my business will more than double over the next 4 months. I'm on track to do it. And that's the thing. That's the two big things that I've really seen with my life that have really affected because the whole thing is, you have to understand, like me, I'm not a malicious person, all right? I'm also not a saint. I'm not going to go around and save some moron, all right? I'm not going to save some moron, tard, idiot, all right? If you're legitimately, if you're going to be a moron for the rest of your life, I want nothing to do with it, okay? I fell out of heaven to 7. My life is a magical journey, and I was born with the answer, all right? Don't start coming up with stuff, all right? In a very realistic situation with this, I don't know, why some people, if you go in a very honest, very kind of, I guess, a modern way of looking at this is see how many people just come up with tax stuff. All right, see how many people just come up with tax, it's like, are you dumb? Go talk to an accountant, okay? Legitimately, if you want to figure out your tax situation, go and talk to an accountant about it. Don't just start coming up with stuff, all right? You hear all this stuff, and it's like, oh my God, if you just make a trust, and my Rolex watch is a tax write-off, and all that, and it's like whatever, and if I start paying my child who's 3 years old, and it's like, what is this nonsense, right? I mean, don't just start coming up with stuff, all right? All right, are you dumb, all right? The whole thing is good. Just go talk to an accountant, all right? Go talk to an accountant. I promise, that's my whole thing. One of my big things about business is if you don't have an accountant, you would probably benefit tremendously from having one. All right, it doesn't matter who you are. You would probably, benefit tremendously from having one, okay? I've talked about the idea, this whole thing about starting yourself an LLC, keeping your receipts, showing your receipts to your accountant. Your accountant will tell you your tax situation. If you decide to go through the whole asset ordeal, And I've spoken about assets. The whole idea is if you systematically understand how to make 14% if you can systematically, reliably make a 14% return on your money, if you can reliably do that, if you can make 14% on your money, if you found a way to reliably make 14% return on your money, then you're effectively going to enter a situation where you are in the very top brackets of the entire economy, and you will do you effectively don't have to worry about money ever again, okay? The only thing you really think about are assets and returns, all right? That's effectively how it pans out. Once you systematically understand how to make 14% return on capital, everything else just everything becomes an illusion, because if you can systematically make a 14% return on your money, you're not just sitting there holding on to something and going, oh my god, this thing's going to go to the moon, or or whatever, you're gambling or whatever it may be. If you systematically understand how to make a 14% return on your money, then and I was watching this interview on Warren Buffett, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but I think I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'm gonna say what I think I remember what he said. And it made a lot of sense to me, was that he buys the broader, or he sells put contracts on the. I'm pretty sure that this is what he said, or he sells put contracts on the broader economy. Something about that. I was looking. I found this interview on him, and I heard him say that, and I was like, wow, that's actually I don't know if it was a put contract or what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was a put contract. And there's like, if you just buy the S&P 500 and sell put contracts, that might honestly be that might be all you have to do to make 14%. I'm not entirely sure. All right, like I've seen people in real estate. And also, one of the big things about buying a house right now is such a horrible idea, is because interest rates are so high and asset evaluations are so high. All right, if you if you like legitimately go and you buy yourself a $500,000 house and you put 3.5% down, and you take a loan for like $475,000 or whatever it is, and you have to pay PMI and you have to pay 6.5% interest, you're gonna get wrecked. All right, you're not gonna make that house isn't worth anything. You're gonna hemorrhage money until infinity and beyond. You'll hemorrhage money. The whole real estate thing. Real estate. The whole thing about it. I mean, rental properties make a lot of sense. I've seen a lot of people talk about rental properties, and it's another realistic way of making money. I thought about it and I was like, this is another realistic way of making money. You put 20% down, and then you increase. Maybe you fix the place up, and then whatever. There's 15% vacancy, and you fix the place up. You raise the rents a little bit. You fill 2 out of the 3 vacancies, or 3 out of the 4 vacancies, or whatever. 9 out of the 10 vacancies. 8 out of the 10 vacancies. And now you got a more occupied building that has better that is effectively a better rental unit, and you increase the rents a little bit, and you refinance the thing or whatever. You take it to the bank and you show it to them, and they evaluate your deal, and they say, well, your rental property has 5% vacancy, and it's whatever, and it's you're making an extra $50 or $100 a person. So, now your building is worth this amount of money, right? And if you had 20% into your deal, if you put a 20% down payment on your deal, and you increase the cash flow, you bought the thing, and you bought the thing at whatever, at when you bought the building, it was already making you a 7% return. But when you fixed it up and you filled out 8 out of 10 vacancies, and then you increased the rents by $100 per door, now you have a whatever, right? Now you've increased your rate of return to 12%. Now you've raised your rate of return to 14%, and you also have a store of equity, right? You have a store of equity. I talk about equity as a very it's not money, but it is money, right? Equity is the whole idea of you have something that is valuable, but it's not money, but it's worth money. All right, and equity is very important. All right, cash flow is important, but the equity is very important. All right, you really want to be making money via equity. You really want to be making money via equity. And and I spoke about this. Like even with my situation, I'm not entirely sure. What I can get with the money that I generate and everything. Over the next 3 months, I'll probably make 65 grand net, right? And I'm not entirely sure. If I leveraged against I'm not going to go and leverage against my assets. My whole thing about it, I don't leverage myself to the eyeballs ever. Okay, I don't ever even consider the idea of bankruptcy. I don't risk bankruptcy. All right, if I legitimately had nothing, the first thing that I would do is invest my own money. All right, if I had a set amount of money, I would leverage against the amount of money that I had. All right, I wouldn't take myself underwater. I wouldn't take myself under financially. I wouldn't take myself into the negative to start, to go and live my dream, because nobody cares about your dreams, right? Nobody cares about my dreams. Nobody cares about your dreams. All right, let's see it. All right, you're gonna have to put in some effort. All right, you're gonna have to get after it. Nobody cares about your dreams. Okay, it's very important that you got to get after it. All right. But once you know how to make a 14% return on a good asset, once you understand how to make a 14% return on a realistic asset, like you can systematically do this, you never have to worry about money again. You never have to worry about money again. This whole idea about, oh my God, the whole idea of getting rich overnight it's kind of it's kind of idiocy. All right, it's idiocy. You have to understand that if you take the honest route about it, if you take the legitimate route to getting wealthy, there's granted that you're born average and you are average, granted that all this is, there is a 98% chance that you make it. All right, as long as you take the honest route. All right, if you're gambling, if you're whatever, hoping that you catch the next rocket ship to the moon, and et cetera, then you're not gonna make it. Okay, even if you do make it, you're not gonna stay made for very long. All right, you're not gonna do exceptionally well for yourself. I guarantee it. There are realistic assets that will make you returns on your money. All right, there are legitimate assets that will make returns on your money, and these assets will effectively be worth something forever. All right, the S&P 500, a piece of rental real estate. Rental properties will be worth something forever. Land will be something worth something forever. A business that produces a profit will be worth something forever. All right, you really want to be in a situation where you're looking for assets that are worth something until infinity. That's what you're really looking for, okay? You're looking for something that is valuable into infinity, and that asset itself needs to be making you the return. All right, don't just hold on to Bitcoin hoping that it goes to the moon, okay? You bought the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is the 500 biggest companies on the planet. You bought the SPY, you bought some index, and the index produces a 1.2% dividend. And the annual average return is whatever, 8%, 10%, whatever it may be, 7%, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, your S&P 500 stock is still worth money. All right, it produced you a return. There is an equitable evaluation of your stock. When you buy something that is worth money, when you buy a legitimate investment, your investment is worth money. All right, your investment is worth money. All right, that equity is a sum of money, but it may not be money in your bank account, but it's worth money. All right, it is worth money. And so, and I've always said that if you legitimately just go and buy $2,000 worth of the S&P 500 every month for the rest of your life, and you don't care what the price is, all right, and and if you're married, that means you would have to do 4,000 because it would be 2,000 per adult. All right, it would be 2,000 a person. All right, and effectively, if you did that for just forever, if you did that forever, realistically, just after about maybe 5 or 7 years, you would start to feel the effects of the wealth. It wouldn't even take your entire life. If you legitimately just started doing it, it maybe take 5 or 7 years. All right, if you put $4,000, like if you're an individual, and you put $2,000 a month into the S&P 500, and you did that for 5 years, right? So you would have how much of your? So it'd be 24,000 times 5. So you would have like $120,000 worth of your own money in it. And let's say over the 5 years, let's say that it went up by 7% compounding, 8% compounding a year. So let's say that you made another, let's say 50%. All right, let's say you made another 50%. So realistically, you'd have almost 200 grand. You'd have something like 200 grand. And if you had 200 grand and that stock was making you an extra 8% a year, if that stock was making you an extra 8% a year, you'd be making an extra $16,000 a year. That would almost be equivalent to the amount of money that you're putting into the stock, right? Your stock would, be going up by like $40,000 a year, all right? And the whole thing about it is, and if you manage to do that, I mean, then after another 2 or 3 years, it would be whatever. You wouldn't have to worry about it. I mean, you would have like what? After 7 years, you would have like, I don't even know. You'd have like 400 grand. And if that was making you 8% a year, that's $50,000 a year that you're making just by the stock. All right, you're making an extra $50,000 a year just holding on to the stock. All right, it's not going to take your entire life. All right, maybe it'll take 5 or 7 years. If it's real slow, it'll take you 10 years. All right. But granted that you don't go and do something, moronic. I mean, it's effectively just unlimited money. The way that I've seen it, from what I have seen, my life legitimately did not change really at all. From me making a couple of years ago or a year ago or something like that, I said my business is making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, and right now my business is making about $15,000, $20,000 a month. And and my life has not really changed at all. The only thing that has changed is now I am farming 375 acres, and I will probably end up buying something like 60, 80, 100 cattle in the next 3 or 4 months. That's the only thing that's changed so far. That's the only thing that's changed. But here's the thing. My income is not my income. The amount of money that I make is going up very drastically. It's going up very drastically. I've actually hit a point in the amount of money that I make where the amount of money that I make is going up exponentially. It's not like I'm going from 5,000 to 15,000. It's like I'm going from 15,000 to 50,000, and then from 50,000 to like 100,000 in the next year. I would almost guarantee, I would be willing to bet that in the next 365 months, my income will actually exceed $80,000 a month. My income will actually exceed $80,000 a month. I would be, effectively, that's where I'm headed. And so, and I don't know, like, I've thought about it, and I was like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with the money. I'll probably end up buying myself a house. I'll get myself a nice house. I want a house with a nice stone floor on it. I'm not exactly sure what I'm gonna do with the money, but that's a very honest way to look at it. I went from making $5,000 a month. Well, I went from making zero, right? Because I started the business. The business didn't exist until I started it. I started the business, so I went from making zero to making 5,000. To making 3,000-4,000 to 5,000, and then now I'm at like 15,000-20,000, and very soon, within 3 or 4 months, my income will be like 40,000-50,000 a month, and then within another 4 months after that, my income will be somewhere around very close to $80,000 a month or something like that. And so, I'm not entirely sure what the amount of money that I generate is going to be. But I will be leveraging myself, and I'll take a look at it. But I would reasonably anticipate that the amount of money that I generate exceeds $80,000 a month in the next maybe 9 months. And here's the thing: if I am netting myself, if I am legitimate, well, I mean, it may not be net. I may be netting myself. I may be netting myself, if out of 80,000, I may be netting myself 50 or 60 grand. But if I'm netting myself 50 or 60 grand, right? And I have 100 cattle that I'm holding on to. Those 100 cattle are also worth money, right? Those 100 cattle are worth money. They're making me whatever, 50, 60 grand a month. If I'm holding on to whatever 200 cattle, those cattle are worth money. And so it's not just the amount of money that I make, it's also the assets that I'm holding that are equitable. And so I can effectively buy anything, all right? Oh, if I have, and I also, the business is also worth something too. Like if I legitimately felt like, buying a large amount of cattle, I can just take a business loan or whatever it may be. But, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with the money. I was thinking I'd buy myself a house. I'd buy myself a nice house, and I'd buy myself a house with a piece of land on it so that I could run cattle on my land and pay for the house. I want to buy. I was thinking I'd buy a house with a stone floor. I'm gonna buy a house with a stone floor, and then I don't know. There's but after a point, there's legitimately nothing to buy. I mean, I make a large amount of money. The only thing that I do with the money is grow my business with it. I'm being completely serious. And but my money, the amount of money that I'm making is going up exponentially. But here's the thing, and I'm gonna be completely honest about it. And I'm just gonna put it. This is how I'm gonna put it. I'm not a saint, and I'm not looking to come off as a saint. I'm not, okay. But my whole thing, and I don't know exactly why this happened, but I legitimately, I'm not materially driven. No, I'm not materially driven. I don't know what it is about me. And I'm not saying but this is just one of the things about me that I have realized about my life, that it is what it is, and and I also think that it's also one of the reasons that I did so well for myself. But I'm not materially driven. I don't know how to put it, other than I don't really have any desire to buy designer clothes. I don't have any desire to right now, I legitimately, the only thing that I want to buy is a 30 caliber suppressor. That's the only thing that I legitimately, I don't want anything else. I'm not oh my God, let me go and spend 10 grand. Let me go and gamble money. Let me go to the bar and drink, and let me go to the restaurant and have night. I legitimately, the only thing that I want is a 30 caliber suppressor. That's the only thing that I want. And I will probably end up buying myself one. I probably will. But the whole thing is I'm waiting. I really kind of want to wait until next year because I don't want to pay the tax stamp. There's something about sending my paperwork to the federal government just, I don't know. I don't know what it is about, but it's just kind of whatever, right? So you have to do your fingerprints and all this stuff, and I'm not a criminal. Okay, I'm not a criminal. I'm not I don't encourage breaking the law. All right, society's a very wonderful thing. All right, I'm not a criminal. I don't know. It just kind of spooks me. Sending my paperwork to the federal government, or federal paperwork. Every time you buy a suppressor, it just kind of unnerves me. I don't know what it is. But I really want to buy a 30 caliber suppressor, but I really want to buy it next year when I don't have to do the federal paperwork and pay the tax stamp. I don't really care about the tax stamp. I just don't want to do the federal paperwork. I don't know why. It just kind of bugs me. I don't know what it is, but that is legitimately the only thing that I want. I don't want anything else. I don't want booze. I don't want gambling. I don't want 5 girlfriends. I don't want designer clothes. Legitimately, I have zero desire for this stuff. And I don't know what, and I'm not saying I'm a saint. Legitimately, I'm not a saint. I'm just saying I have zero desire for this stuff. I don't know what it is. I'm just being completely honest about it. I have zero desire for this stuff. Like I don't, it's just whatever to me. The only thing that I probably end up doing with the money is just growing my business with it. I'll probably, that, but that's the whole thing about it, about me growing my business is the way that I think about it is that when I grow my business, I increase the amount of money that I make, right? And so I might as well focus on that, right? Why would I focus on spending money? Why would I go out of my way to spend money? It's a waste of time. I would, I'm gonna focus on growing my business, and if I want to buy anything, I'll just buy it. That's how I think about it. Legitimately, that's how I see it. I can legitimately just buy anything, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to buy anything. I don't want to. I think it's a waste of time. Like why would I go to the Gucci store and buy a whole bunch of Gucci clothes, right? Why would I go and buy myself even one Lamborghini? Why would I do that, right? I don't, why would I go and get myself, 5 girlfriends and a Rolex? Why would I do that, right? I mean, it doesn't mean anything to me, right? The way that I see it, and the way that I see it is I focus on growing my business because it's challenging to me. And at the end of the day, it's growing my business makes me more money. And so whenever, if I ever feel like spending money, I will just buy whatever it is that I want. But it's not, the only thing on that list right now is a 30 caliber suppressor. That's it. Honestly, that's it.